Good afternoon. How is everybody today? This particular talk is going to be less technical than what I originally had in mind when I proposed it. My name got transposed on a spreadsheet, and that led to the mess up that I didn't actually know until yesterday morning that I was even scheduled for a talk. So this is going to be more of a state of the union than anything else. So this is about how the where data compatibility data that is out in the web ecosystem comes from, and how it where it comes from, and how it gets out to the web development community. Um, this has a human failing at the center of it, which I will get to shortly, and I call it the lurking monster. But let's talk about the something that you may have seen in recent months. The compatibility tables on MDN have changed the way they look. Um, this is an image of the new version, and this is as you can see, it tells you that this particular feature, and I don't even remember what I captured this from, but this particular feature is pretty interoperable across the web. And although we would like to know specifically what versions. Uh, or what versions of that this particular feature landed in from all of these browsers. This is at least a step in the right direction. It may be that this is not practically interoperable because maybe it's supported in Edge, but it's the Edge that came out last week, and that's not the one that has gone completely through the ecosystem yet. Something else that you may not have realized about about the new tables is there's more to this than just styling. Previously, these tables were hand constructed in MDN, uh, and that had the problem that there was really no way to short of uh, there was no gated quality check on this. And so every time somebody made a change to it, you had to be subscribed to the particular page, um, uh, which you had, and subscriptions have to be done one at a time on MDN. uh, and then having subscribed to that page, you'd have to go and review it and correct it if it were wrong. In the new world, all of this data is stored in JSON files in an MDN database, or I'm sorry, in a GitHub repo. Uh, and that is, if you're interested, that's under MDN browser compat data, and anybody can submit pull requests to it. Um, okay, come on, my slide won't advance. Ah, here we go. A quick word about can I use. I'm in this talk. I'm largely going to be ignoring can I use, but no. When we get to the lurking monster of this subject, that can I use suffers from the same issue. Part of the reason I'm ignoring it is because I actually have not personally had a chance to talk to the guy who creates this. Um, there also seems to be a number of other people who are voting with their feet to go to MDN, and the decision to follow MDN instead of can I use for what I'm about to show you, that was made above my pay grade. So please bear that in mind. And if anybody knows the guy who creates this, I would love a face-to-face introduction to him rather than trying to talk to him on email. So if he's here, please point him in my direction. So the consequences of what we have been doing up until now. All right. So the good things. As I said before, we can now quality check the data that goes into this MDN data repository um, in a systematic way. There's also a growing ecosystem of tools, including a Firefox Dev Tools plugin that can actually take this data and make it available within DevTools as a reference. The shortened URL there at the bottom takes you directly to the list of those, but among them are an MDN. You can actually, it's an MDN project. It doesn't have much functionality, direct functionality itself. This is more of an API for accessing it in whatever tool you want to build. And some of the other tools actually use this NPM tool under the hood. This is a picture of the Firefox DevTool inspector. And this actually, what you're looking at here is an aggregate or an aggregate review of a single page or assessment of a single page. Um, and so the page that is under test in this particular case, this will tell you which browsers can view that page um, uh, uh, successfully in a browser. Now, um, question: I think I have probably been more vague than I intended to up to this point. Um, is this clear what I'm talking about here in this particular case? That if I, all right, I'll walk through it. Let's say you go to a particular, you open up a page that you're building uh, in Firefox, and you open up DevTools, and you go to this tool, and this chart shows you everywhere that your web page should work right now. That's the intent of this tool, and it's currently being this. There's a coworker of mine is currently working on a port of this tool to Chrome's own DevTools console. Uh, this is a command line tool that lets you query about specific information. It can also be imported into a project. Um, this is another command line tool that just prints a version of the same compatibility data to the console, which would be particularly useful, I think, in Node as you're trying to build and debug Node items. And believe it or not, people are starting to add Node's compatibility data to the MDN repository. Uh, Okay, okay, my text is cut off here. Um, Last month, we had a hackathon in Paris to build more tooling around this particular compatibility data. You can see this is Mozilla's offices in Paris. They're very beautiful. If you've As you can see, this I'm told that this was the Austrian embassy 300 years ago. This particular room is not that old, but Marie Antoinette probably walked in that building. I would bet that Mozart probably walked in that building too. Yeah. Oh, and there is a this particular the short URL here is a report that Mozilla itself put out about this particular event with long descriptions of any of the tools that came out of it. The bad, and this is the problem: the number of PRs against the Mozilla database is extremely large. This is just the PRs from yesterday morning. And if anybody's been paying attention to how many or to how well I have been documenting new APIs on MDM about the last 4 months or so. Um, that is supposed to be my job. My velocity has slowed down to an absolute crawl, mainly because of the conversion to MDN database and the conversion to this particular database. Now the problem here is that we're catching mistakes that have been in on MDN for years. Something else I messed up. Did I do all of you know what MDN is? I should I should ask that question first. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. Um, so this has really been kind of getting this has really been getting in my way. Uh-oh. Did you guys see that? I don't know. Let's find something's that is not good at all. I don't know what's okay. Well, here's the problem, okay? All of this data is hand built, right? It comes from what humans know, what they think they know, which which is the really scary part, and what they can learn by digging through databases. And we're actually I've gotten pretty good at going into our own code repo and walking back through the commits and finding the right commit hash and looking it up either on Omaha Proxy or Chromium Dash, which I should have provided links for. If you, I apologize. Um, and this is the hidden monster I was referring to, was the fact that all of this stuff is currently hand built. Meanwhile, in a Google office outside of Toronto, Canada, there's a Googler in the ecosystem infrastructure team by the name of Mark Dittmer, and a couple of months back he started working on a tool called the API Confluence Dashboard, and it has a catalog that also shows you compatibility data. What's interesting about Mark's tool is that he has a process that actually launches browsers, not just Chrome, but launches all browsers and walks the object graph on all of those browsers to find out where things are supported. As far as I know, this is the first tool anybody's ever built to generate compatibility data automatically. Um, it does, however, have a couple of problems. Um, uh, uh, Wait a minute. In the right order? Okay. All right. I have my slides in the wrong order. Um, at my urging, Mark was very generously created a tool that allows us to extract information from his Confluence tool and output it into the format used by the MDN compatibility database. And I've shown the front page of that tool here. If you again, this short URL will take you to that tool if you're interested in playing around with it. And this actually is, I said earlier that I had wanted to provide a more technical talk, and I didn't because I didn't find out about this until real late. I was going to actually talk exclusively about this tool and show you walk through how it worked, and encourage you to take advantage of it if you so chose. Um, the Confluence compatibility data unfortunately has a little bit of a problem. Uh, it should go to, as I think of it, it should go to 11, but it's more like five and a half. Half of 11? No, no. Okay. And one thing I should make clear: this is not a problem with anything Mark did. He's a brilliant guy, and the limitations to this data are actually inherent in the browsers themselves. It cannot get right now cannot get data on objects retrieved from object factories. And so if you to get an object, you call widget dot get interface. Right now, it Confluence has no way to do that and to get information about whatever interface comes back. Um, it also right now only contains data about desktop browsers and not mobile browsers, and that's an artifact of that particular the ecosystem team has they don't want to the environments they're using to generate this data, there are too many differences between the versions of um, uh, the mobile browser versions that they're having to spool up, and they feel like it's too much of an apples to oranges comparison, going from Chrome 51 mobile to Chrome 52 mobile to Chrome 53 mobile. From the point of view of documentation, I don't think that's the case at all. But I it is what it is at this point. The data also contains a number of false positives because of the way some of this stuff is represented within the browser itself. And again, I apologize. I was going to get a more if I had had more lead time, I would have gotten a more complete explanation from Mark on on that last particular point. But to give you an example of it, uh, there was a change somewhere around Chrome 43, I think, that led to Confluence showing a whole bunch of features as having shown up in 43 for the first time, even though many of them have actually been in Chrome almost from the very beginning of its existence. So, are there any questions? Yes. Correct. That's a good, yes, that's another, I should have mentioned that, but that's correct. Oh, thank you for the correction. We have a couple members of Mark's group here, so if I do you know anything about the issue surrounding the false positives, like for okay. Uh, yeah, and that actually makes this particular path for getting compatibility data a little bit problematic. I would love to trumpet this from one end of the web ecosystem to the other. The problem is, unless you're aware of the limitations in the data, you're likely to merge incorrect data into MDN, and um, that may not happen, but the downside, the what'll actually happen is that I personally will have to review the pull request, and reviewing, I'm having trouble keeping up as it is, and reviewing a bunch of incorrect pull requests is not really helping me. One of the things I was One of the reasons why I'm talking about this now is because I'm hoping that somebody out there has other ideas about how to improve the situation around compatibility data. I think we're already in a better position, one, by being able to gate this stuff, and by being able to generate at least part of the data. Mark's tool going forward is going to be particularly useful on new APIs, since because it's fresh in people's minds, and I can talk to, the people who built it are still, are still right, literally right next door. I can get through those particular pull requests easier. But it is important to do a lot of the stuff that's been around for a while, because I have found APIs that have been around for years, or that have been supported at least by Chrome for years. And you go out to MDN and it says we don't support it, and I fix those fairly regularly, and I can only wonder what that situation has to be true for other browsers as well. That's an interesting idea. Are you a Googler? Jay Medley, can you send me an email about that? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I alluded to this at the I alluded to this at the top that or somewhere in the talk that I think this is more of an issue with recent APIs than it is with older APIs. This, for example, if this is something that's been in the web since 2005, it's unlikely that that the no situations out in the wild are going to break anybody. If this is an API we created yesterday, then I absolutely need to know that it's only the most recent version of IE that has it, or the most recent version of Firefox or whatever. Yes. Correct. We would like, and actually, the Microsoft has um, I would say the most accurate right now are probably us and Firefox. And it's because the Firefox people care about this as much as I do for fairly obvious reasons. The Microsoft folks have actually only been on the job about maybe a year, whereas I've been doing this for 3 years. And I they care just as much, but it's gonna be a while before that stuff gets solidified. The Safari, your guess is as good as mine. This, I'll tell you, the item on this list that actually scares me the most, though, is not Safari. It's UC browser, which is a Chromium fork, and I have no way to find out any meaningful way. And do I want to take the time? Yes, because there's a million customers in Europe or in Asia, but no, because my job really should be writing the reference pages rather than building these tables. Yes. I only do it for Chrome, and the way I do it is I go into the Chromium code search and I go to the IDL file, and then I backtrack to when the IDL landed in the I follow the commits back to when the particular feature I'm interested in first landed. And then I take the commit hash and I look it up in either Omaha proxy or there's a new tool called Chromium Dash. And sometimes that gives me a result, sometimes it doesn't. The thing I worry about is that I think sometimes IDL files may land in trunk before they're actually available in reality. That concerns me a little bit, but it seems like most of the time uh, what I've found is that. Um, that if the commit has an IDL file and the C++ and header files that go with it, um, I believe that's fairly accurate. If somebody could confirm that for me, I would love it. But then I'll also look if there's I will pay attention to whether a command line flag shows up or is removed. And so and this is where it gets tricky because the removal of a command line flag doesn't mean it landed. It just means, it may have been set to stable in the runtime enabled properties file, and it may have just hung around for a few versions. So then I have to go double check and find out when did that flip to stable in the runtime enabled properties file. It's tedious, but and a lot of times, or not, if it's old enough, I may not be able to actually find the information, anything from before the WebKit fork. I have no idea how to find out when that landed, and that's 5 years ago now. So I generally will just put yes in the box instead of a particular version number, which is an acceptable value. Uh, I have discovered that, and I'm trying to think of there was one I saw recently that was implemented all in JavaScript files, and I can't remember what it was. Think it was streams, yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of jumping around. Oh, runtime enabled was removed in this merge. Okay, now I got to go find where that flag was actually flipped to stable, if it was, or if it was. Sometimes they just remove it and and skip stable. Um, I found that file just the other day because and it's funny. I don't know why I never seem to ask the right people because I ask around. How do I find out whether something's on an Android, not on desktop? And everybody, yeah, right. See, any other questions? Um, my plan on the short term actually has been. Um, Well, a couple things. First, I have actually slowed down, and I have told the Mozilla people that I am slowing down because I/O is approaching, and then after I/O, I'm going to have to try to get caught up on actually documenting pages. Um, uh, Other than that, I do not have a plan, and I'm not really sure how to do it. I've tried to enlist the help of other people in DevRel, and what I'm finding is that they actually don't know this territory, or they don't seem to know this territory as well as I do. Yes. I should, to be honest, I should do that. The reason I've shied away from it is it's my understanding that there are some issues surrounding directly asking Google developer experts to do anything on our behalf. But maybe I think there are labor law issues, but I could be mistaken on that. Yes, that's the hidden. You walked in late. I started with the theme of this was there's a hidden monster, and the hidden monster is that there's too much human judgment in this process to begin with. And what Both. And so, if uh, uh, I will actually go first thing I'll check is I'll actually go look and see if I can find it in the code base somewhere. Usually the IDL, and I tend to always say IDL because that's where I spend about 95% of my time doing this research. The method for an HTML element or CSS rule are slightly different, but most of what I do is the IDLs, and so then I will do the search um, uh, to see if I can find out when it landed. The other actually the caveat to that is that on recent stuff I go to Chrome status, which is reliable because I have either previously looked it up myself using the same process, or I have pinged the feature owner and said, "Get your data up there and make sure it's accurate." And so that uh, for recent stuff, I for very recent stuff, I start there because I have a high level of confidence in it because of the time I've personally put into improving that. I would say that it's for yeah, there are issues with trusting the Confluence data. I think most of it is accurate, but it still has to be human vetted. Yeah, Mark has been. I think Mark has been working on that. I believe, but again, I'm not up to speed on it. I've been doing IO stuff, so um, I I I hate that I don't have that answer for you. But yes, it's. I'm. I Yeah, you know what? That would probably be worth investigating. I'm heading down to the Samsung event in San Jose right after this. I'll I think Allie's supposed to be there. I'll bring that up with her. See what she thinks. Any other questions? Yeah. Put that in your email to me. Back to your question about putting more of the onus on the submitters. Uh, we may that may actually happen whether I bring it up with Allie or not because one of the things that we're going to do in the next few months is we're going to create some reference materials. We're not sure where, but adjacent either to MDN or to the MDN compatibility database, where you can actually go read what is the process for verifying something in the code base, and there'll be a Chrome page and a Firefox page and a whoever else has their source code available on the internet. There'll be pages for that as well. We hope so. Hopefully, in a year for and that's not meant to be the end all be all, but I think it would be an assistance to not only somebody that would make it possible for people to not only check their own PRs, but that would also help enable somebody who has an idea about automating this stuff. If there's no other questions, then Go have some coffee. Thank you.